polarization is necessary thing in politics. If you don't have polarization, you don't need election, right? We have election because we have polarization.
If elections are just to elect everyone to join the same government, then why do we have elections? What's the point of having elections? So it does raise very serious problems. So, but go back to your prof. Yes, of course, it's part of the history.
I think that's also a great observation. Yeah, patrimonialism, patrimonial politics has never withered away from Southeast Asia. It has always lingered on and get back to us in time, give us pain in the ass. The ground is fertile, and this is no fertile ground for democracy. Imported from, yes. Masya, do you have anything more to comment? No? Maseli, do you have any more to comment? I think we will have Q&A briefly, perhaps. I'd like to invite questions from the audience, engage our esteemed speakers. Any question, perhaps? Babuka, fabulous, thank you. Would you be so kind, introduce yourself briefly before you ask a question?
My name is Babuka Sise, and I am a second year student at the Faculty of Social Sciences. I would thank the writers for the insightful review, but also thank you for the book. I think those of us at the Faculty of Social Sciences, in general, those taking electoral politics with Prof. Yadi and Dr. Jide will take complete ownership. It seems the others had us in mind when they were writing this. So my question is channeled to Prof. Yadi, and given the rise of digital populism and identity-based politics, which take the form of populism channel online and emotionally based narrative online. So which is increasing the polarization of the society. So what new indicators can we use to judge electoral quality in the region? That is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Babuka. Would the speakers like to respond? Yes, Masya.
I will respond very briefly. The question should be answered with a long series of research. Yeah, but I think the most polarized politics we could see in Indonesia should be related to the years of 2014, 15, 16, 17, and also 19, right? Polarized politics will be, by the way, polarization is necessary thing in politics. If you don't have polarization, you don't need election, right? We have election because we have polarization. So polarization is not necessarily a bad thing. It is something we need, but again, it is necessary, but we cannot have the so-called pernicious polarization. Yeah, I think one of the examples of pernicious polarization is the divide between Republican and Democrat in the US, for instance. In my opinion, what they have now is a kind of pernicious polarization. Pernicious polarization is not necessary because it can lead us to the situation where you cannot negotiate anything, right? But polarization is needed because we can negotiate things, right? If everybody is agree with everything, everyone gets along, then we don't need to negotiate anything, right? Therefore, it is important. But in Indonesia, we have polarization in 14, 15, 16, 17, and all the way to election 2019 because of several things. One is that it was identity-based polarization. Identity-based polarization should not be considered always bad, right? But identity-based polarization will be pernicious when one identity is It's placed into situation when it is facing the other identity in the spirit of erasing one identity in the competition with erase another identity, right? So there is a kind of feeling we are racing against the identity. If you don't win, the identity will erase us. It will a kind of genocide. It will be genocide or something like that. That's what we have, for instance, in the election of 2016 Seperti of Jakarta in Indonesia. One identity is faced against the other, contradictingly. That's one. Number two, if the supporters of the political players are all united in one identity-based coalition, right? So, for instance, in Indonesian term, for instance, you are having Islamist versus nationalist competition or polarization, right? If that happens, then pernicious polarization will happen. And number three, pernicious polarization can happen if it is very competitive. Very competitive. You can win the election, for instance, the competition only by 2 or 3% margin, not a landslide. That will lead to the use of anything including religion, ethnicity, as identity-based politics. Okay? But interestingly, so far, since 2019, we don't see that, I think. We don't see that kind of polarization. Now the question is, why? Is it because identity-based polarization is no longer important? Or because, as I mentioned, they want to be all in one camp, right? So they know how to make sure that this kind of identity politics will not be played around, right? So for instance, I am, let's say, from Islamist, I am the Islamist candidate. I will, so in order for me to avoid the accusation of using identity-based politics, then I will ensemble the supporters from all over kind of people, from Islamists, from nationalists, from Java, from wherever. And that also the same thing for the other side of the candidate, right? I think that that is one of the possibilities of what is happening. Everybody in the election is envisioning that, that guy will be winning. So in the campaign, I don't need to be so harsh to him. In the campaign, I don't need to be so polarized in terms of position with him or her, and so on and so forth. In order for me, after the election, I can still jump in to the coalition. So go back to that kind of politics. Now, I think your question can lead to very important research on how social media is facing this phenomenon. We know that some research have resulted in some tentative conclusion that with echo chamber kind of phenomena, right? Is it right, Sylvie? Echo chamber phenomena, polarization is always inherent, always eminent to be there. But in politics, at least in election of 2024, in my opinion, I don't see that. So is it still good for Indonesian democracy and polarization in the next round of election or not? It's subject to another research.
Thank you, Mas Jay. Abuka, do you get your answer? I think that's a great answer. Mas Jay just mentioned that polarization is precondition of politics. Only some type of polarization is actually detrimental, the pernicious one. Indonesia, interestingly, last election didn't see severe polarization, Mas, yeah, because politicians is anticipating post-election possibility of alignment again and bagi-bagi, Mas. And you need to read Silvi's new dissertation later, in a couple of years. Maybe some more questions. Wafa, fabulous. Would you be so kind and introduce yourself, Wafa?
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask the question. My name is Wakaus. I'm a student of political science at University Islam Indonesia in Malaysia. Following the discussion, I would like to ask the countries that were the colony of British, they tend to adopt a parliamentary system. In the countries that were the colonies of America or, for example, Dutch, they tend to adopt a presidential system. So, do you think it is a colonial legacy as well? Also, it is a colonial legacy. And if yes, it is a colonial legacy. So, what implication it might have for democratic stability and governance in these countries? Thank you so much.
Do you mean the system, whether it is a colonial legacy or not?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
one way, it affects the quality of contemporary politics.
Yes.
All right, fabulous, Robert.
Very quick answer. Like I said, colonies are not democracies and were never meant to be democracies. And so one of the lingering myths of empire is that imperialism was justified on the basis that we are colonizing you so that one day you can govern yourself. Actually, we were governing ourselves long before empire. Yeah, one. Two, colonialism is preventing democratization. That's the whole point. Yeah. And so as a result, overnight, many of these countries, be in Southeast Asia, but also South Asia and Africa, overnight had to adopt systems. Now, it doesn't matter whether the system you adopt is a presidential system or a parliamentary system. What's important, and this is, I think, something that we touch on in this book, you always touch on in this book, is that in the post-colonial present, many of the societies of Southeast Asia have reverted back to what they regard as an authentic identity. And that identity is a pre-colonial identity. And that also means that it brings us back to our feudal past. And so whether it's presidential or parliamentary, it doesn't matter, because you can still manipulate it to go back to your feudal past. So you either have feudal presidents or you have feudal prime ministers. But fundamentally, it goes back to a kind of political praxis that involves patronage. What Brother Jayadi was talking about. So why do these parties want to be part of the coalition? The coalition is the big pot of money, and everyone wants to swim in the money. Right? So there's no point to antagonize potential allies, because to be part of that coalition needs you have access. So what are we seeing in Southeast Asia now? Are we witnessing the return to neo-feudal forms of transactional patronage politics? I think that's what's happening. And it's true that can minimize the cost in terms of public discord, violence, antagonism. And you'll see Southeast Asia is actually more stable now than it was 50 years ago. But that stability comes at a price. And the price is the absence of critique and opposition. Because now everyone has followed the same rules of the game. If you want to get your contract, you want to get your patronage points, there's only one road, and that is the road of grand oppositional politics. Just now, Masrendi talked about the coalition in Malaysia. There have been attempts to bring all parties in Malaysia too. Yeah, there's been attempts to bring all parties, including the Islamic opposition party, into grand coalitions. So across Southeast Asia, we need to ask, why is this happening now? How come in so many Southeast Asian countries, there is this shift towards grand coalitional politics. And what does it mean about our average Southeast Asian understanding of politics? Is this what we understand democracy to be about? If elections are just to elect everyone to join the same government, then why do we have elections? What's the point of having elections? So it does raise very serious problems. So, but go back to your prof. Yes, of course, it's part of the history. But the history we are talking about here is not the colonial period. It's the pre-colonial past that is really making its presence felt all around us. In our popular culture, in our political culture, in our religious practice, we see all of this merging.
Thank you, Mas Faris. Wafa, does that answer your question? Okay, fabulous. Any more questions? I think we need to ask two more, but and then.